We are living in a time of the greatest wealth gap in history. Billionaires who are richer than anyone has ever been, literally wielding powers on par with countries. Sometimes that power has big impacts that people cheer. There are billionaires who've made some of the largest charitable donations in world history to help the poor, fund health care. Others have bought entire institutions. When Jeff Bezos first bought the Washington Post over a decade ago, there were many people in journalism and in sort of the nonpartisan fact community that said that was a good thing. And the Post leaned in, touting its role as a newspaper holding the Trump administration accountable, even buying, do you remember this, a pricey Super Bowl ad in 2018. Now, you might be thinking newspapers are usually pleading for donations or offering you a mug or a tote bag to buy to subsidize them. And by the way, I encourage you to consider doing that if you like your local paper. But they don't usually buy the most expensive ad space of the year. But again, they had that billionaire owner. And here was that ad's mantra. Democracy dies in darkness. And Bezos, in that era, spoke out against exactly how Trump was demonizing the free press.
It's really dangerous to demonize the media. It's dangerous to call the media lowlifes. It's dangerous to say that they're the enemy of the people. We live in a society where it's not just the laws of the land that protect us. We do have freedom of press. It's in the Constitution. But it's also the social norms that protect us. It works because we believe those words on that piece of paper. And every time you attack that, you're eroding it a little bit around the edges.
That was dangerous, he said. And Bezos knew his business empire would still have to deal with the United States government under President Trump. The Post held strong, and while it insisted on a nonpartisan approach, it wasn't against any single party. The nature of Trump's agenda, his attacks on the rule of law and democracy and facts, right, tested how top news outlets would face that extremism. And the Post didn't shirk. Bezos had the Post's back with that slogan we mentioned, democracy dies in darkness. He said there's an important role in making sure there is light against that. And Trump took his beef with the journalists. He escalated to the front office, as he does. He wanted to punish the owner, Bezos, for being involved with the Washington Post. And he also clearly wanted to send a threat, a message to other rich and powerful people through this process. We'll come back to that in a moment tonight. But very quickly it became clear Trump hates Amazon were the headlines, reporting on Trump's goal to abuse power to go after Amazon. That's according to 5 direct sources they had. Trump's obsessed with Amazon, a source said. Obsessed. This wasn't just idle talk. Trump used his government power, took measures to go after the businesses tied to the press that reported on him. What we know is what has been revealed. There may be other efforts we don't, but there are headlines and fact-check reports about him trying to punish CNN by imposing the merger of its corporate parent. That ultimately passed, or denying billions that Amazon was maybe going to get from government contracts. That's according to one lawsuit about Trump's vendettas. In the last campaign, which we all lived through, Trump only got more explicit. Retribution for perceived foes. And so Bezos, even before Election Day, clearly saw all this, what I just showed you, fought what he would have called the good fight back in the first term, and made a shift. And there are new developments on this today. For Bezos, gone were the vows to defend the Post no matter what, or to affirm that mantra for democracy. Bezos actually jumped into the editorial side. This was in the campaign homestretch. You probably remember some of it, to change their practice and eliminate any presidential endorsement in 24. An unusual move which suggested Bezos was taking this new tack. Now, in fairness, I want to make sure you understand all sides of the story. He claimed that the endorsement shift had nothing to do with Trump. But the action yanked the planned Harris endorsement, which broke practice. And so to many, it looked like a signal to Trump that Bezos would be able to at least take some actions at the Post, maybe not hand editing every story, but some actions to appease Trump, to quiet some of the Washington Post activity which Trump opposed or viewed as critical. Now, I want to be very simple and clear here. The point is not that the endorsement itself would somehow shape that election. Very few people think national newspaper endorsements are the final thing that shifts undecideds in swing states. And Trump has never gotten many of those endorsements. Meanwhile, he's still won the election twice, once outright and once through the Electoral College. The point was that Bezos was using the Post differently in a way that would appeal to Trump. And that while Bezos denied that goal, he would say that it wasn't the reason. His own reporters and editors saw it that way. And they're the ones with inside knowledge about how things work. And they were so concerned, some of them took the type of professional and economic risk that Bezos and these other billionaires are not taking, resigning their jobs over this journalistic incident. Bezos said that stopping that planned Harris endorsement had nothing to do with Trump and Harris, that it was an unusual late October shift, but it was designed to improve the Washington Post's credibility. He wrote that presidential endorsements create a perception of bias. And as for appealing to Trump, no quid pro quo of any kind is at work. Neither campaign nor candidate was consulted or informed. Okay. But there was no allegation of a formal quid pro quo, and I mean, this is not an impeachment probe. And newspaper owners can do what they want. There was also no allegation that Bezos was going to tell Trump in advance. Everyone was going to find out when this happened, including Trump, when you yanked the endorsement. The actual objection from those top Post journalists, some of them now former employees, was that Bezos was forbidding the paper from what it usually does for one reason: to warm up to Trump in the context of all of the business pressure. Now, that controversy went on and on. Now there's new evidence on what Bezos' business empire is doing, because they've made a new $1 million donation to Trump's inaugural committee. That's the kind of support and message that doesn't happen without Bezos. You can see the Wall Street Journal, which knows business, very clearly says Bezos' Amazon will donate this $1 million to Trump's inauguration. And the billionaire, in a recent interview with Andrew Ross Sorkin, went out of his way to double down on, and I'm showing you this all now because we know more now than when this happened in October, to double down on the very perception that he claimed he opposed in the clash over Bezos yanking the Harris endorsement. And it's a lot more money than Amazon gave in 2016, which was around $57,000. So many, many other orders of magnitude this time, which looks different. And now Bezos says he's optimistic about Trump and his leadership. And he also says in his warming up to Trump something that we don't hear much even from Trump's aides, and I've interviewed a lot of them over the years. Bezos says America is witnessing a changed new Trump, a calm and settled leader.
If we're talking about Trump, I think it's very interesting. I'm actually very optimistic this time around. You've probably grown in the last 8 years. He has too. He is calmer than he was the first time and more confident, more settled.
There you have that. Bezos is one very important businessman who chose to enter this fray with the Washington Post purchase. But the point tonight is not even to just fixate on him or the link to journalism, because this is much broader. Consider that Trump's many attacks on democracy and the FBI are often seen first in the context of law and politics, like his recent claims about sending political opponents or political critics to go to jail. But the same autocratic issues come up in business. And this is a trend we've seen in many countries where any leader can wield unchecked power. It affects business first and foremost, because all around the world people need money, and a lot of people want more money than they have. So now we're seeing some of the richest, most powerful business leaders rush to fold, including tech leaders who often pride themselves in their public remarks and their entire branded lives as being smart and independent and having visionary plans beyond the way things used to work or the old government routines, let alone giving in to brash efforts to intimidate them. But some of them are already folding, and if they are, what message does this send to everybody else who certainly doesn't have their money and lawyers and networks of support? You see the faces here, some of them famous. Mark Zuckerberg shifting gears to cozy up to Trump following the Elon Musk school. Others might be less known by their face. Google CEO Sundar Pichai was joining his own company employees' protests in the first Trump era. What a different time that was. You think about when people say, well, this isn't politics or this isn't partisan, there's right and wrong, or you have to stand up. And as the leader of a company, sometimes there are issues that come up where your own employees say, how can we even work here if you won't stand up? And it was in that context that the Google CEO stood up against one of Trump's first acts in government, the travel ban.
There are some values which are really near and dear to your heart. It's foundational and something which you should never compromise on. And the fight will continue. So that's it.
Google's leader going from what he said right there, quote, never compromise, that against the travel ban in year one of Trump, to now making the trip to Mar-a-Lago, even amidst planned mass deportations, which at a numerical level could affect far more immigrants and people who are in this country or trying to come and go into this country than the original travel ban on which he said he'd never compromise. Another leader, CEO Mark Benioff, opposed Trump in 2016. Now he says he sees great promise for Trump's America. Or take one of the newest tech heroes, the artificial intelligence pioneer Sam Altman, who is, by all accounts, a brilliant person. We've even had some of his employees on this program to explore the visionary field of AI. But I want to remind you something that he might not want you to know. Maybe you can find it in ChatGPT. In 2016, he said Trump was an unacceptable threat to America, unfit to be president. Now, he would have you believe the threat has become the solution. And Altman says that Trump is a great leader to take us into the age of AI. He knows money talks, and he went even beyond the company coffers and made a personal donation of $1 million to Trump's inauguration fund. The richest, most powerful business titans. On record, some of them warning about Trump's danger, even spending years in what they called the good fight. Some warning about his abuse of power to silent dissent and corrupt systems, ranging from a free press to a free market. And what we're seeing now is that they are bending. They are doing what author Tim Snyder warns against, obeying in advance. And so with everything else going on, we ask tonight, what does this portend for the Trump second term? And does reporting the truth about it even matter? And that answer is simple. Of course it does. It's precisely the power of truth, of facts, of reporting, especially when powerful forces are not held accountable by other dynamics, that makes this such a big story. It's why Jeff Bezos bought the Post. It's why Trump wants to control these forces, the press, and the people who might be subjected to learn some facts about him or his government, past, present, or future. It's why your knowledge of these facts matters, even in an environment where there's a heck of a lot of money swirling around between some people eating their own words, because they used to warn against the very efforts to stifle dissent and facts that they are now joining.